What happens when a movie is too big for the big screen? And what happens when the scenes that were cut from a theatrical film are not actually forgotten? They come back. And this time, they come back with Xiao Zhan. From Gezhi Town, the emotional war film that introduced audiences to the ordinary craftsman Mo Dexian, to Mo Dexian, a brand new 3-part online story film, this is no longer just a deleted scene story. It is the story of how one character refused to end when the movie ended. And surprisingly, even People's Daily has already placed the spotlight on this story. So how did one ordinary character become important enough to receive a second life? Let's find out. First, we need to go back to December 6, 2025. That was the day Gezhi Town officially arrived in Chinese cinemas. Directed by Kong Sheng and written by Lan Xiaolong, the film starred Xiao Zhan as Mo Dexian, alongside Peng Yucheng and Zhu Iran. The story takes place during wartime. But instead of beginning with legendary generals or larger-than-life heroes, the camera focuses on ordinary people. Mo Dexian is a craftsman, a mechanic, a husband, a father, a man who does not dream about becoming a hero. He simply wants his family to survive. And that is exactly what makes his story so powerful. In Gezhi Town, Mo Dexian and his family escape the chaos of war and eventually settle in the fictional town of Gezhi. For a brief moment, it seems like they may finally have a chance to live quietly. But war does not care about ordinary people's plans. When Japanese soldiers arrive, the peaceful life of the town is shattered. The people of Gezhi have nowhere left to retreat. And that is when the real transformation begins. The man who wanted nothing more than to protect his family is forced to make a choice. Run again. Or stand and fight. And Xiao Zhan's performance made that transformation especially memorable. Mo Dexian is not presented as a fearless superhero. He is afraid. He hesitates. He reacts like an ordinary human being confronted with unimaginable danger. That vulnerability becomes one of the character's greatest strengths. Because courage means very little if there is no fear. The character works precisely because Mo Dexian is not born brave. He becomes brave. That difference matters. And it is one reason People's Daily chose to speak directly with the creative team behind the film. In December 2025, People's Daily's Zai Chang interview featured writer Lan Xiaolong, director Kong Sheng and actor Xiao Zhan. The discussion focused on one of the film's central ideas. Why do ordinary people suddenly decide to fight? Xiao Zhan explained the motivation through the people known as the Mo Dexians. They were not simply fighting for the roof over their own heads. They were fighting for future generations. That idea gives the film a much larger emotional dimension. A small family becomes a symbol. A small town becomes a symbol. And one ordinary craftsman becomes a window into the courage of ordinary people. But here is where the story becomes even more interesting. When audiences watched the theatrical version, they knew they were watching only one version of Mo Dexian's story. The original material was much longer. According to reports surrounding the production, the initial cut exceeded 2 hours and 40 minutes, while the theatrical version was ultimately around 121 minutes. That means a huge amount of carefully filmed material could not fit into the cinema release. And this is where filmmaking becomes painful. Every scene has a cost. Every character has a story. Every performance contains details that may take hours to create, even if the final audience sees only a few seconds. Director Kong Sheng has described filmmaking as a kind of ritual. When audiences enter a theater, they give the filmmakers a complete piece of their time. The creators have to decide what to reveal, what to hide, what to compress, and what to sacrifice. And letting go is never easy, because the material being removed is not simply footage. It contains lives, experiences, relationships, and moments built around characters. So when Gezhi Town was released, some viewers naturally wondered, what happened to everything we never got to see? And then something unexpected happened. The answer was not another director's cut. It was not simply a collection of deleted scenes. It became Mo Dexian, a 3-part online story film centered on the character played by Xiao Zhan. The project reportedly uses unused material from the original production and expands Mo Dexian's character line. In other words, the audience is not simply getting leftovers. They are getting another chapter. And that changes the way we look at the original film. Because suddenly, scenes that once felt like the end of Mo Dexian's journey become the beginning of another question. Who was this man before the final battle? What did he lose? What did he want? How did an ordinary craftsman become someone capable of standing between his family and war? And perhaps most importantly, what does an ordinary person look like when history forces him to become extraordinary? That is the real attraction of Mo Dexian. It is not simply more Xiao Zhan. It is more of a character that audiences had already become emotionally attached to. This distinction is important. A spin-off can fail when it feels like a commercial extension. But a character story can work when audiences genuinely feel that the original story ended too soon. Mo Dexian belongs to the second category. The character has unfinished emotional business. And the three-part format gives the creators something a theatrical film could not. Time. Time to slow down. Time to explore relationships. Time to allow small moments to breathe. And time to show the man behind the hero. That is also why Xiao Zhan's portrayal becomes more interesting when viewed through the lens of Mo Dexian. For years, Xiao Zhan has been associated with characters from very different worlds. But Mo Dexian required something completely different. He had to remove the polished image, the clean appearance, the effortless star quality. Instead, audiences saw a tired, frightened, ordinary man. A craftsman whose hands matter more than his status. A father whose greatest ambition is simply to keep his family alive. That is a very different kind of star performance. And perhaps the most interesting thing is that the character does not need to shout to become memorable. Sometimes the smallest reaction tells us more. A look, a hesitation, a trembling expression, a body that bends under pressure, a moment when fear appears before courage takes over. These details are what make Mo Dexian feel human. And this may explain why the character continued to attract attention long after the theatrical release. In 2026, the story gained another unexpected chapter when Mo Dexian was introduced as a three-part online story film for the Juhaukan large-screen on-demand ecosystem. The project was presented as an extension of Gezhi Town rather than an unrelated new movie. And suddenly, the question changed. Instead of asking whether the deleted material was worth watching, audiences began asking, how much more of Mo Dexian is there? That is a very different kind of curiosity. It is character-driven curiosity. And that is one of the strongest forms of audience engagement. Because viewers may forget a plot. They may forget a battle scene. But they rarely forget a character who made them feel something. Mo Dexian made audiences feel fear, loss, helplessness, love, and finally, courage. His story reminds us that heroes do not always look like heroes. Sometimes they look like tired fathers. Sometimes they look like workers with dirty hands. Sometimes they are people who desperately want to run away but realize there is nowhere left to run. That is what makes this story surprisingly fresh. It takes a familiar war film structure and changes the center of gravity. The story is not asking, who is the strongest person? It is asking, how far can an ordinary person go when the people he loves are threatened? And suddenly, the answer becomes much more emotional. This is also where the title Gezhi Town becomes meaningful. The film was never simply about one battle. It was about a place, a temporary home, a community created by people who had already lost so much. And when that home is threatened, defending it becomes more than defending a building. It becomes defending the possibility of having a home at all. That idea connects directly to Mo Dexian. He is a craftsman. His instinct is to build, to repair, to make things work again. But war is designed to destroy. And that creates one of the most powerful contrasts in the story. The invader destroys. The craftsman repairs. The war takes lives. The craftsman tries to preserve life. The world tells Mo Dexian to become a soldier. But deep down, he remains a man who simply wants to build a life. That contradiction is what makes him fascinating. And now, with Mo Dexian expanding the story beyond the theatrical cut, audiences have another opportunity to see that contradiction from a closer distance. This is also why the People's Daily connection matters. People's Daily did not merely highlight Xiao Zhan as a celebrity. Its coverage focused on the film's creators, the ordinary people at the center of the story, the meaning of home, and the transition from escaping war to defending one's home. That gives the project a very different kind of cultural context. It is not simply celebrity news. It is a conversation about why stories about ordinary people continue to resonate. And Xiao Zhan happens to be the actor carrying that emotional weight. In April 2026, Xiao Zhan also received the Most Popular Actor Award at the 33rd Beijing Student Film Festival for his performance in Gezhi Town. That recognition adds another layer to the journey of Mo Dexian. The character began as an ordinary man inside a war film. Then audiences remembered him. Unused material became new material. A supporting emotional thread became a three-part story. And a character that was supposed to end with the movie suddenly gained another life. That is the fascinating part of this entire journey. Sometimes, a story does not become bigger by adding more explosions. It becomes bigger by giving its characters more time. Gezhi Town gave us the battle. Mo Dexian gives us the man. And perhaps that is the real reason this story feels fresh again. Because the most interesting question is no longer whether Mo Dexian can survive the war. We already know what the war demands from him. The deeper question is, who was Mo Dexian before the world forced him to become brave? What did he dream about? What did he lose? What kind of father was he? What kind of husband was he? And what kind of man was hiding behind the fear? Those are the questions a theatrical runtime could not fully answer. Now, the audience gets another chance. From Gezhi Town to Mo Dexian, this is not simply a story about adding scenes back into a movie. It is a story about giving a character another life. And maybe that is the most beautiful thing about filmmaking. Sometimes the scene that could not fit into the first story is not really the end. Sometimes it is simply waiting for the right moment to become a new story. For Xiao Zhan, Mo Dexian may have started as one more role. But for audiences, he became something much bigger. A reminder that courage does not always begin with confidence. Sometimes it begins with fear. Sometimes it begins with a trembling hand. Sometimes it begins with a father looking at his family and realizing, there is nowhere left to run. And that is when an ordinary man becomes unforgettable. If you watched Gezhi Town, would you watch all three parts of Mo Dexian to discover the story that the theatrical film could not fully tell? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about Xiao Zhan, Chinese entertainment, and the characters behind the headlines, make sure to subscribe. Because sometimes, the most interesting story begins after everyone thinks the story is already over.